Jim Crow 2.0. This crisis is escalating all across the country. A new tally by the Brennan Center for Justice finds there have been 361 bills introduced in 47 states trying to make it harder to vote. That is a 43% rise from just last month. The fight for voting rights summed up in these images: Georgia's governor, surrounded by white men, signing a bill that is nothing less than an assault on the right to vote, while a black woman, an elected representative, is arrested for knocking on the door. Georgia State Representative Park Cannon was literally locked out while the bill that is designed to restrict ballot access to people of color was signed into law. She joins me now for her first interview since that dramatic arrest, and her attorney, Gerald Griggs, is here as well. Thank you both for joining. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for getting the information out to all of America about what's happening in Georgia.
Representative, first of all, I just have to ask you, how's your arm before you walk us through what happened? How's your arm? I see you're in a sling.
Yes, we do not have a full diagnosis yet, but I am looking forward to being healed and restored so I can continue to stand with the people.
And this happened during the arrest?
You know, it did.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about this. So take us back to that day, if you will, of your arrest. Walk us through what you were trying to do and what happened, Representative.
So I'm 29 years old, and I happen to be elected to the district that Dr. King's birth home is in, Ebenezer Baptist Church, the Carter Center, the King Center, and even the state capitol building. Additionally, I am internally elected as the caucus secretary, just like Rosa Parks was with the NAACP, which means that it has always been my job to take minutes and to be present to witness bill signings. I have the pens to prove it. So when we learned late in the hour, all of a sudden, that this bill, Senate Bill 202, was being passed, it was important to be there to witness it and to get the information out, just like I always would.
You were trying to do your job. Listen, I want to quote you of something that you said. You said you were afraid what might happen during your arrest. What were you afraid of?
I was afraid, just like many Americans are when they come into contact with law enforcement, that there would be a need for me to protect myself. But instead, I was able to just continue to think about the world was watching, people could see, and it was still very terrifying. In that moment, I was hopeful that people would see that I was being nonviolent. And even as we speak right now, the legislative session is over. The pen strokes have been made, but the people's voices have not been heard.
So the video is up now of you being arrested as you were knocking on the door. There are two troopers there, one now and then another one walks in. Have you had a chance to look at that video? And if you have, what do you think when you see it?
Yes, and it makes me wonder why. Why were they arresting me? Why were they doing this? Why did the world have to experience another traumatizing arrest?
Attorney Griggs, let me bring you in now. Thank you for waiting patiently here. Let's talk about the charges against the representative here. 2 felonies. How could knocking on a door at a place that you work result in a potential 8 years in prison? It's just unfathomable to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely unconscionable. And I mean, to merely be asking for transparency and to be present in the moment when this bill is being signed so you can witness it on behalf of 4.5 million Georgians that will be affected, and so that you can report back. As Representative Cannon said, for the last 5 years, she's always been present to witness the bills, and that's all she wanted to do that day. And I think it's horrendous that an individual would be subjected to the potential of being incarcerated for over 8 years for something that she's routinely done for many years and just demanded transparency in this moment.
Is this a lawful arrest, or is it your intention to at least litigate this or try to get this removed? Because As I understand, you're saying that this was unlawful. It was unlawful for her to be arrested because she was actually at her place of work, and it should not have happened. She cannot be arrested at her place of work. Am I correct?
Yeah, the Constitution says she can't be arrested while she's a sitting member of the legislature unless there are three exceptions. One is a felony, two is treason, and the other is breach of the peace. And we believe, based on the facts and evidence, that none of those exceptions apply, and she was free from arrest under the Constitution of the state of Georgia. So we plan to litigate to the fullest extent of the law. We're hopeful that the sitting district attorney will review the evidence, listen to the witnesses, watch the video footage, and dismiss this case, and hopefully we won't have to proceed to a trial, but we are more than willing and ready to do that if necessary.
Representative Cannon, I just want to read this. This is from the arresting officer's incident report about what you were doing. He says, I felt that if I did not take action, the other protesters would have been emboldened to commit similar acts. The events of January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol were in the back of my mind. I didn't want the protesters to attempt to gain entry to a secure part of the Capitol. When you see him compare you and the protesters to the violent, angry mob that stormed the Capitol, to the mob that chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," what are you thinking?
I've been thinking about January 6th since the day that it happened as well. I think it's important that we remember what actually happened on that day. There were law enforcement officers who were injured. There were Georgians who went there, acted out, flew back home, and then came back to their communities like nothing happened.
Yeah. I just got one more thing because I promised to talk about your arm, and either you can answer it or Attorney Griggs. Officer Langford says that you resisted arrest. He says you stomped on his right foot several times. He says you stomped on the other officer's foot too. Is that true? And also, what happened during the arrest that resulted in the injury of your arm?
Well, she's not going to comment on what the officers have alleged. They have alleged a lot of things, and they will have to prove those in a court of law. We believe that the facts and evidence, as we know them, are inconsistent with what the allegations are in that report. We also are in the process of getting her medical treatment, and the doctor will determine the extent of her injuries. But what we can say is that the facts and the evidence from witnesses and video will show that she did nothing felonious in this incident.
Attorney Griggs, Representative Cannon, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Be well.
Thank you, Don.
You too.